What's up, duders? Time for your daily dose of internet madness. Some people burn toast. Some people accidentally send a risky text to the wrong person. And then there's our hero today. If there were Olympic medals for romantic catastrophes, this storyteller would have swept the podium. As you listen, I encourage you to imagine sitting in the audience of a community theater production titled Romance But Make It a Legal Liability. Because that's effectively what we're dealing with. Also, let me warn you, there will be cringe, there will be heart, there will be moments where you'll look up from your device and mouth the words no, 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 don't do that. And yet, you'll keep reading, because we humans are drawn to glorious failures. Let's begin. Today I messed up by attempting a romantic gesture and sending my neighbor to the ER. Hi, I'm the idiot who tried to recreate a romantic comedy moment and instead created a medical situation for a man who just wanted to take out his recycling in peace. This happened last week, but the psychological fallout is ongoing. A little background. I, 28M, recently moved into a small apartment complex in a chill little town. My neighbors are mostly quiet, younger professionals, except for one, Mr. Whitaker, a 60-something ex-middle school math teacher with thick eyebrows and stories that start with back in the 80s. He's kinda grumpy, but in that secretly sweet Disney grandpa way. Meanwhile, I recently started dating this amazing woman named Layla. She loves romantic gestures, homemade gifts, surprise flowers, handwritten notes, basically every movie moment where the audience goes aw. My love language is awkward half smile while I hand you something from Target. But I've been trying to grow. So last week, Layla casually mentioned she'd had a long week and could use something to lift her spirits. And I, having just watched a rom-com involving a grand romantic reveal of string lights and indoor rose petals, decided, I can do that. Narrator's note, pause here to let the audience appreciate how clearly this was going to go wrong. I spent the day planning. She was coming over the next evening. I bought battery-powered tea lights, scented candles, roses, a couple yards of chiffon fabric. In the store I said light drapery for a romantic scene, like some theatrical genius, and a tiny Bluetooth speaker. I wanted the reveal to be magical. I imagined ushering her in, hitting a button, and soft music playing while lights sparkled like we lived inside a Pinterest board. Here's where our friend physics comes into play. My apartment is small and cozy. Cozy meaning you can set a pan on the stove while sitting on the couch without leaning forward. Space was limited. I spent 2 hours taping chiffon to the ceiling like a draped canopy. But tape is not gravity's equal, and chiffon is heavier than I realized. It kept drooping. I added more tape, more thumbtacks, a broom to hold part of it in place. It started to look less romantic and more emergency curtain wrangled by a man fighting for his dignity. Next I set the tea lights down the hallway in a trail meant to lead Layla in. Then I added the candles. I'll stress that I did consider safety. Every candle was on a plate. I'm not a monster. I turned off the lights and tested the scene. It did not sparkle elegantly. It looked like a church basement hosting a seance. Still, I convinced myself atmosphere would solve everything. Now, the climax. I rigged the Bluetooth speaker above the doorframe with some command hooks, planning for Layla to hear soft romantic jazz when she walked in. The hooks squeaked, but held. Sort of. Layla was due to arrive at 7:30. At 7:20, I went to the bathroom to change into something nicer. While I was mid-buttoning my shirt, I heard a metallic clatter followed by the sharp crash of something hitting the hardwood floor. Speaker? I called, but then I heard a man yell. I ran out, heart pounding, ready to fight home invaders or intelligent raccoons. Instead I found the door wide open, tea lights scattered, chiffon hanging off one tack like a flag of surrender, and poor Mr. Whitaker on the ground holding his forehead. See? Mr. Whitaker had been taking out his recycling. Something glinted at the bottom of my stairwell, battery-powered tea lights leading up to a slightly open door. He thought someone needed help. He walked up, pushed open my unlatched door, and was promptly clocked in the forehead by the falling Bluetooth speaker. It had slipped out of the newly failing command hooks like a traitor. There was a small amount of blood. He looked mostly startled, partly annoyed, and 3% deeply confused. Why are there candles everywhere? He demanded. This was not the time for explanations like romance, Mr. Whitaker. I scrambled for tissues, apologized profusely, and helped him sit down. Then came the worst part. The cut wouldn't stop bleeding. I tried to be calm. He tried to be calm. Neither of us succeeded. After a few minutes, I grabbed my keys and said, I'm taking you to urgent care. That's when Layla arrived. She opened the door to see me holding a dish towel to our elderly neighbor's head while chiffon dangled sadly behind us. Her expression was exactly what you'd expect someone to look like if they walked into the world's least effective bachelor lair/ambulance. Oh my God. What happened? Mr. Whitaker, bless him, answered, your boyfriend tried to kill me with music. The drive was long and mortifying. Imagine being wedged in the front seat beside someone injured while your date rides in the back, trying not to laugh but also clearly wanting answers. Urgent care staff did their absolute best not to show their delight at the situation. Mr. Whitaker needed 4 stitches. 4. They asked how it happened. He told them proudly, romance, gravity, and a Bluetooth speaker. By the time we got back, Layla was giggling. At first I thought it was pity laughter, but then she hugged me, kissed my cheek, and said, "This is ridiculous, but ridiculously sweet." We helped Mr. Whitaker back to his place. He grumbled the whole time but then said, "Next time, maybe just flowers." Layla and I ended up on the couch eating takeout while the chiffons sagged above us like a circus tent after a windstorm. She told me she appreciated the effort. I felt a tiny bit proud, until my phone pinged the next morning. It was a text from Mr. Whitaker. "If you're going to install airborne electronics, let me know so I can wear a helmet." Let's pause. At this moment, as readers, you might be thinking, this protagonist is well-intentioned. This protagonist should not be allowed near ladders, hooks, or decorative fabrics. This protagonist owes Mr. Whitaker either cookies or a lifelong subscription to a medical alert service. Our OP is trying, really trying, but trying with the same earnest chaotic energy of a golden retriever learning to bake. Let's continue. The following few days were awkward. Word traveled fast in the building. Everyone who saw me in the lobby looked at me like I might attempt to install a trebuchet in the living room. I apologized again to Mr. Whitaker, showing up at his door with muffins and a handwritten card. He opened the door, peered at me like a general surveying a battlefield, and sighed. "Well, the muffins look store-bought, but I'll take them." We then drank coffee together and actually had a nice chat. Turns out he taught for 40 years and once had a student accidentally set a trash can on fire trying to impress a girl with a homemade smoke bomb. So now I'm just one more story in his mental file of young idiots learning life. Honestly, I can live with that. Layla, meanwhile, kept telling the story to friends. Every time she told it, I died a little inside. But she also followed it every time with, "He tried." And that's huge. Which was kind of the point. I'm still not allowed near decorative ceiling setups. I've accepted this as my fate. Update. Hi again. Thought I'd update since several people asked, in my imagination, anyway. And because Mr. Whitaker deserves a redemption arc. First, his stitches dissolved cleanly and he's fine. He occasionally points at the ceiling of the hallway and goes, "Structural integrity, son. Structural integrity." But I think that's his version of affection. Second, Layla and I have continued dating, without further injuries to the elderly. But something happened this weekend that somehow turned the whole situation into the most unexpectedly heartwarming moment of my year. Saturday, Layla suggested we all have dinner together. Me, her, and Mr. Whitaker. I expected he'd say no. He said yes. Apparently he wanted to assess the health risks of continued association. So we ordered Chinese food, sat around my small kitchen table, and talked. About teaching. About love. About how Mr. Whitaker once accidentally glued his hand to a school diorama while demonstrating paper mache. Then Layla looked at me and said, "Want to tell him what you've been working on?" I froze, because I knew what she meant. I had decided I wanted to gesture romantically again. Just safer this time. So I learned to play a simple song on guitar. 3 chords, maybe 4. My fingers still felt like they were made of concrete, but I managed to strum through. So I grabbed the guitar and played. Mr. Whitaker listened quietly, then nodded and said, "No head trauma this time. Improvement. A plus." Then, here's the wild part. He disappeared into his apartment and came back with a thin box. Inside was an old woodwind recorder. Not a toy, the real kind. Apparently he once played in a small folk trio. He said, "If you're going to court someone melodically, do it with support." We ended up playing the most chaotic duet ever formed. Me on badly tuned acoustic guitar and Mr. Whitaker on a woodwind recorder in a minor key for reasons unexplained. Layla wiped tears from her eyes laughing. And in that moment, I realized something important. I had worried so much about being impressive, about trying to be what romantic movies say men should be, but what actually mattered was something much smaller, and much more ordinary. Trying together, laughing together, showing up. At the end of the night, Mr. Whitaker put on his coat, pointed 2 fingers at me, and said, "Next time you want to be romantic, start with something that stays on the ground." Honestly, fair. Ladies and gentlemen, what we have here is an evolution. A man who started as a hilarious hazard to society and ended up forming a beautifully awkward intergenerational bond through blood, music, and Chinese takeout. If more communities operated like this, the world would be a gentler place, or at least a more entertaining one. So what's the lesson here? That romance doesn't live in grand gestures. It lives in effort, humility, and the stories we create while trying. That being ridiculous for someone you care about is sometimes the most human thing you can offer. And that if you hang anything from your ceiling, maybe use screws instead of discount command hooks. But mostly, that connections, friends, partners, neighbors, are built on shared moments, even the deeply embarrassing ones, especially those. That's all, folks. Don't forget to update the video. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one. Doot doot.